I often think sometimes we should just let it breathe, right? Like we should bring people into our conversations before the show. Not every conversation, but it's like interesting, fascinating, just
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think
let's
that it would definitely be one of those things where, especially what we were talking about just a second ago here. I mean, I think people will get a chance to see a preview of that at one point. So,
storytelling. Gotta love storytelling. All right, let's
mhm.
do this thing. And I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I don't know if your headphones are too close to your mic or something
Hold
like
on for a
that.
minute. How's that?
That's a little better. You
Okay.
still sound good.
All right.
All right. It was your wardrobe change that did it.
I did. I knocked the hell out of that thing, man.
All right. Our YouTube overlords will be happy. All right. 3, 2, 1. Why does it seem like every other day I'm getting a Cam Newton make or break story? It's the top 5 make or break quarterbacks, not only in the NFL, but in fantasy football here. And Matt, Cam Newton, is he going to make it or not? Is he going to beat out Mac Jones or not?
I think if we say by the length of the season, he's not. If we start by the end of training camp, I think he will. So, we have to look at it from the standpoint of the season. And I think that certainly Cam Newton has put in the work. Mac Jones is going to need a little bit of time to really adjust to the speed of the game, probably to what the demands are of the offense. So Newton will probably be in better shape at this point to give it a go. But I think from the standpoint long term of what they want to do offensively, they drafted Mac Jones for a reason, which is, the ability to complete passes at a level that I don't think Cam Newton's going to be able to do for the long term in terms of middle of the field, being able to make, really strong pinpoint throws with timing in a passing game that I just don't think Cam Newton is any longer at that level of being a timing passer that he maybe even used to be. And I would say that's probably has always been a little bit of the weakness of his game, is being a great timing passer.
And that's the thing. Mac Jones drafted for a reason and such a perfect fit. The dirty secret in the NFL, Matt, it's all about fit. So when we talk about these QBs, and we're going to get to the likes of Daniel Jones and Drew Lock and maybe even a surprise one, a favorite of Matt Waldman's, that's coming up at the end of the show. But with Mac Jones, before the draft, all the 49ers talk was always bunk to me, although the 49ers were very, very clandestine with what they were doing, much more so than they normally are. Now, usually, I won't give away too much, Matt, but usually there are people who write big-time mock drafts that everybody reads that will reach out to me about certain picks. And one of those is the 49ers, because I usually know. This year, from a person in the know, when I was writing my mock draft, I just sent this person in the know around the team or whatever I got to say. I said, I'm putting Trey Lance at you guys. Is that okay? Not necessarily asking, but this year had been so much different. They were so much more buttoned up. And I never believed the Mac Jones stuff for a second. But I received a text message back that was just a wink, like a little emoji with a wink. And I was like, okay. So when others who write major mock drafts that people read and everybody knows would reach out and say, I think about putting Mac Jones there, I'd be like, well, I can't tell you what I know, but I just think it's going to be Trey Lance. Now, it actually doesn't happen that way all the time, but it was one of those things like Mac Jones doesn't really fit. He's like Kirk Cousins, like not really. But with Josh McDaniels, I think that's a fit there. All the Patriots beat writers, Matt, say this is going to be legit, a real competition. So all I'm saying is there's a chance that Mac Jones shows that off. Cam Newton saying he's healthy for the first time in 5 years or whatever he said. Like there's a chance this is more of a competition than some think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is that, a lot of people think of Mac Jones as a player who his arm's too weak, that he was propped up by Alabama's system, that he's someone who really is not a first round talent. But when I looked at him, I see a player who throws with tremendous anticipation, who has terrific pocket presence in terms of being able to anticipate pressure and move away early on a level that befits his athletic ability. There's some people who hang in the pocket too long, like Baker Mayfield early in his career would hang in the pocket too long because he thought he had the athletic ability to maneuver. And he didn't understand, really the barometer for the athletic ability versus what his, what he would be able to do in the pros. Mac Jones shows that he understands that he's slow. So he knows how to be able to work around that and be able to make plays. He'll take a hit if he needs to, but he's someone also that is extremely aggressive, really good feel for understanding defenses and being able to work through that. I mean, when you have a guy like Nick Saban who's like, listen, man, you guys need to calm down. You need to stop throwing, touchdowns against my defense. We're trying to work on something here and you keep exploiting it. And he's like, well, make them stop me and then I'll stop throwing them, and it's like that kind of swagger, that kind of aggression. He reminds me, a lot of people say he reminded him of Tom Brady, but the more I watched him, I think he's a little bit better of a creator. And I think that Mac Jones is more in the spectrum where Peyton Manning is at the top of that spectrum as opposed to Tom Brady, because Tom Brady is a very step-by-step oriented quarterback who's very, just kind of task oriented, but he's so much at the top of that spectrum that it looks like he's creating when it's really that he just remembers everything. Yeah. Peyton Manning's more the guy that's like, that can create at the top of that spectrum. So I would say that Mac Jones as a pocket quarterback is a little bit more like Manning in that respect. And I know that, you look at him in this particular offense, I think by midseason he'll get in. He'll have some struggles because, again, it's the mental part of the game, and that's the strength of his game. So he's going to get sacked. He's going to throw interceptions. He's going to look bad at points. And they're going to go, well, why'd you bench Cam Newton for this guy? Right. And then just like every year that Northeasterners and the rest of the country says Tom Brady was done in New England for the past 10 years, Mac Jones will ascend to a point where we'll go, oh, he's actually pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. So I just think that with Newton will – I look at this as that Newton will probably win just on the merits of his comfort with the system and experience.
Starter.
Yeah, and that Mac Jones basically will show enough that they'll know what he needs to work on. They'll give him a taste of, first quarter reps and things like that during the preseason so that he gets the opportunity, and then they'll sit him until week 6, week 8, or if Newton is absolutely horrible, week 3, week 4. But I expect him somewhere in the midpoint of the season, no later than early November, to be taking a hold of that job.
We were talking about writing before the show, but I'm thinking of Tale of Two Cities. Because one thing that fantasy GMs need to realize, Matt, and it comes to this conversation when we get to Drew Lock, but I think it really fits with Cam and Mac, it's going to be two different looks. Your offense with Cam is going to look much different from your offense with Jones. And the thing with Mac Jones, everything that you said was true about his physical talent. His pass placement, though, is so uncanny. And I feel in a way it's like when we talk about Teddy Bridgewater when he came out of Louisville. It's like he can't do everything, but what he can do is pretty good if it's used the right way. And I think Jones is even better in terms of pass placement than Teddy Bridgewater was, even though Bridgewater and DeMonte Parker loved to hook up deep on those Louisville games back in the day. But I think with Jones and almost all of these situations that we're going to talk about tonight, you have to realize the assets that you have are going to look different when the other guy starts playing, whoever that other guy is.
Yeah, if you want to watch more on Mac Jones, listen, I have an RSP film room of him pre-draft. Mark Schofield and I spent an hour going through a variety of looks on his tape where he picked some plays that he liked or things that he wanted to see Mac Jones improve upon. I did the same. We combined them, and it's a great look at this guy as a player that kind of highlights what you and I have just talked about with him. I mean, there's some plays there where you want to talk about toughness. Nick Bolton might be the best hitting linebacker in this draft class, the Kansas City Chiefs pick. And he lays out Mac Jones in the first week of that game where Mac Jones knows it's coming, throws the ball with anticipation, and throws a touchdown on an over route Yeah, he gets killed. I mean, he gets creamed. And when you do that, as Mark noted very well on that, in that moment, and Mark was a college quarterback at Wesleyan, he said, when you do that, your team remembers that all year. That fires them up all year. Your defense is like, we'll play harder for you because we know you're going to give us a shot. We know you're tough. Your offense knows that, you know, if he's going to get the ball there, you better make that play because he's sacrificing himself for you, you know.
Right.
And Mac Jones has that swagger and that toughness. And there are some guys who have the swagger, but they don't have the ability to stand up and like really, you know, walk the talk. And I think that he's a guy who does both.
It is the Audible Live here on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/footballguystv. Cecil, Lammey, Matt Waldman, and I want to remind you about our Football Guys mobile app. Download it today. If you haven't already, it can be used on all smartphones and gives you all the same tools that you'd find on our website. Newly revamped website. Looks pretty slick, by the way. And our Draft Dominator app will make sure that you have an edge above your league mates by customizing the advice specific to your team. Download today so Football Guys can help you win. Save time, worry less, win more. footballguys.com. Make sure to check out our Football Guys mobile app in your app store. Quarterback numero dos as we continue the conversation. And what's funny is, Matt, when I'm writing the newsletter, right? And I'm writing the newswire every day for Football Guys. I'm like, some stories you're just like, I get it, okay? Mike Williams is going to play the X, everybody. Woo. And, you know, and before the franchise tag was like, Chris Godwin's not going to get a deal. Like, Allen Robinson said, yes, for the 10th time. How many times can I write about this? We know Allen Robinson's not going to get a deal, okay? Now, I'm venting, but I'm venting for a reason because it seems like the Daniel Jones hype. Is it real? In a make or break year for Daniel Jones, and if we go down our newswire, again, at footballguys.com, you can see all of the stuff that I've written about Daniel Jones and how his coach, Joe Judge, is happy with his progress. When he was pressured on 30% of his dropbacks, the highest percentage for any quarterback with elite 350 attempts per Pro Football Reference, our friends at PFR. So the Jones hype, better protection, Kenny Golladay, etc., and a healthy Saquon Barkley, which he's been tweeting out those videos of those quads and those calves. So let's talk about Daniel Jones in this make or break year. And is he going to make it or is he going to break it?
Well, I mean, I think that we have to look at this as a confidence. and I still feel that way, to be honest, Brandon, you know, is that I think at the end of the day, it is going to be a break, but I'm going to kind of tee it up as to why. Right now, they're going to pump him full of confidence. You know, this is year 3. You look at the team, and with the addition of Kenny Golladay, with the better offensive line, they brought in Golladay basically to erase some of the issues that he has downfield. He's not an accurate thrower downfield in terms of pinpoint accuracy. And as a result of that, they needed someone who could be a big body who can go up and win the ball. And that's why Golladay is there. So they're hoping that will kind of shore things up enough that his general accuracy will be enough to create big plays. Saquon Barkley, well, I mean, listen, if he can be healthy by week 1, that's going to be great. I think we talked last week that none of us really anticipate that. He doesn't really even anticipate that. So I think we're talking maybe the first 2 to 4 weeks of the season where Barkley isn't going to be in there. It's going to be Devontae Booker.
Booker gets more work, yeah.
Yeah, so Booker gets more work, if not most of it. And so, you know, looking at this team, they have their first-round pick in Kadarius Toney, who, as I wrote in the RSP, very skilled player who could be a Golden Tate-like presence once he gets a little bit more developed. But one of the biggest issues with this game that I noted is that his footwork's awful, and he's like his gait, it basically overcompensates for the length of his frame in a way where he slips everywhere. And in camp, sure enough, he's slipping. He's getting dinged up. He can't catch passes because he's on the ground trying to break on routes that he can't break with because fundamentally his routes aren't sound due to his footwork. This is going to take a year for him to probably figure out. I mean, like there'll be some nice little screenplays and RPOs
And
where he
there'll
doesn't
be
have to
some
do
buy low
much.
moments because you know how fickle fantasy GMs are. So he's going to be slipping, he's going to be dropping. Everything sucks. First round bust. Blah blah blah. Type. And you're going to see all this Twitter and all that. And in your dynasty league, you're going to go buy low, buy low, buy low.
Or he's going to start off great because I'll use him like Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, where they're basically glorified running backs for a while. And then he starts to stink it up when they put him in situations where you got to act like a receiver. And then you'll get that disappointment where you can maybe buy low. But with Jones, it comes down to one thing. Yes, the more protection will probably allow him a little bit more time to throw the ball where he can be a little bit more accurate, and the margins that are narrowed by Kenny Golladay can be helpful there. But at the end of the day, it's still about pressure. And even if he's not pressured the most, in the league this year, he still has this kind of lack of awareness when it comes to moving in the pocket and knowing where his man is, or being able to deliver fluidly and watch what's going on. Like he holds on to the ball too long. He has issues where he gets hit and could have avoided a lot of these hits and ends up losing the ball.
Yep.
I'm watching like week 17, which was one of the weeks where he was supposedly had a better week, and it was against the Cowboys and their lackluster team at that point. And I'm watching him climb in the pocket. I'm like, oh, that's good. He climbed in the pocket. And then, everyone's playing off, and he's got a running back, who splits off into the flat. And he knows the running back's in the flat, but he's so robotic and unable to like look and settle and throw that it's just like he throws the ball way behind the running back, and it just looks like someone like who knew the answer but has no feel or timing for how to deliver it. So it's like, it's like telling a joke. If you don't have the timing for a joke, you're going to look awkward. It's going to look awkward. And when he's in the pocket, he's like someone trying to tell a joke who's just completely awkward and humorless. And that's a part of the game that's hard to correct. And I think at the end of the day, he's going to have difficulty ever getting better at that. It's kind of like Blaine Gabbert. Like you can say, oh, he's gotten better at it, but it's like, yeah, to the extent that he's playing mop-up duty and teams aren't trying to stop him, or it's, he's playing against second-tier NFL players, at the end of the year when everyone's on the bench and he throws for 400 yards. Okay, great. Or he's behind a great offense and, those types of things. I think Daniel Jones is kind of a Blaine Gabbert-esque type of talent who maybe not as bad, but at the end of the day, I think he's going to break. They may buy one more year out of him, but I think when they stop, they're not making the playoffs year after year.
Right.
And it
in
becomes
that
apparent,
division.
Yeah. And it becomes apparent he's the reason, even if it's just one play, because it'll be that slow bleed where it's like, oh, well, it was just that one play. They were 9-7 this year, and he had several 300-yard days, and he was, he reduced his interception percentage, and his sack percentage was lower. And then the next year, it's like they got into the playoffs. It's like Andy Dalton, it's like after a while, you're like, right. People be arguing he's a good enough quarterback, but it's always comes down to those 3 to 5 plays that he fails at. And Daniel Jones, to me, is that type of candidate.
We still hear the same thing with Derek Carr. And I'll go back to his college days. Quite frankly, I didn't think he'd get drafted as high. Now, I could have flip-flopped him and Drew Lock, and we're going to get to Drew next. But the game against Temple, I think it was his last game, Matt. And what do you have, like 5 touchdowns? He should have had 8.
Yeah. Like,
that's the thing. Even when Daniel Jones had his best day, right? And everyone talking about it down at the Senior Bowl. Oh, my God, Daniel Jones. I was like, he's okay. He's like a poor man's Carson Wentz, which makes a lot more sense now. But when you looked at it, even that Temple game, it's so frustrating to watch because everyone's like, yep, great game. And instead of 5 touchdowns, he should have had 8.
Yeah,
he's always been that guy.
Yeah, it's box score scouting versus actual film scouting. Because if you're actually scouting to the standard of what the NFL expects by watching NFL film and applying that type of standard to what you're watching for on the college game, then you start to realize things like I watched John Mechie, the wide receiver for Alabama, today, again, for the third or fourth time, and he drops passes that are in tight coverage. And one of the things that he does wrong is that when a pass is at a certain height, he uses his hands like he's trying to clap on, like he's making a sandwich with 2 pieces of bread. Yeah.
Yeah, the Cortland Sutton thing.
Yeah, so he dropped the ball doing that. He had one that was behind him a little bit on a go route that he got wide open on and did a great job, clapped on that too. Then he had a low pass that he caught, and then he got hit behind in the legs, but because his hands weren't in a perfect position. And people will go, well, it was a really low throw, or it's a really high throw, or it was just one play where he did that. Well, you've got to look at the standard for like how many plays is he going to have where he runs quick hitting slant routes where the ball's going to be right in his chest, and he's got to know to use uniform hand position one way or the other. How many chances is he really going to get? In Alabama, when you're one of the top athletes and you're really good for the college game, if you drop 7 or 8 of those in a season, big deal, because you're going to be wide open, and probably score 3 touchdowns in that game. Whereas in the NFL, if you do that once in a game on a third down, you're on the bench and they're going to bring somebody else in. And that doesn't mean that John Mechie isn't good and isn't a great prospect, but it's indicative of the college versus the pro game and how you scout it. And when you look at Daniel Jones, it's the same thing. They look at the box score and you look at that and you go, that's great. And you think, well, he also misses a lot of passes that are makeable that pro players should make. And it's the difference between a guy like him and a guy like Trey Lance, who maybe had receivers drop passes or they didn't give him as many reps. So his box score didn't look great in the passing game, but what he did in terms of adjustments, in terms of what he did in the mental part of the game, what he did when he did throw the ball was more impressive, when you apply it to that standard. And that's something that I think a lot of people fail at when they're doing media scouting.
The Audible Live now talks about Drew Lock. And people say that I'm hard on Drew. Well, somebody's got to be, because Denver media is so damn friendly to the guy. Tell us how great you are, Drew. Like, I refuse to do that. As someone, I had a first-round grade on him. I thought the Broncos were going to take him at 10. John Elway told him, you're going to be a top 10 pick. And they had number 10, and then they moved back, and they took no offense. But they were still able to get Dalton Reisner and Drew Lock in the second round. Certainly make or break year for Drew. There is no doubt. There is no question. The conversation about, his footwork's still poor. I watched him in OTAs and mandatory minicamp. Footwork's still the same. If you watch how he tries to rocket everything in, that's still the same. There was a pass, and not to give too much away, but there was a pass to Tyree Cleveland that was a slant. It was a 12-yard gain. And had Drew put it right here, okay? And I'm reaching behind me for our audio audience. Had Drew put it right here, it would have been a touchdown, because Justin Simmons didn't have the angle on Tyree Cleveland, and Cleveland would be gone. Cleveland's a nice little sleeper, by the way, super deep dynasty a tip for you there. But that's the difference that it takes between Teddy and between Drew. Now, Teddy doesn't have that rocket arm. Teddy loaded up one time, threw it like 50 yards, fluttered at the end, and I counted it. It was about 50. I think he threw it from the 45 into the end zone, his 45. And it took everything he had. Like, he just rocket trying to fire everything. It's just like at the end, like pull, like you're skeet shooting or something. But so, you have the difference. But I'll tell you this, those slants to Tyree Cleveland are actually Jerry Jeudy, because Jeudy and Bridgewater are on fire. If there's one thing that you're going to take away from the Audible this summer, is if Teddy's in, Jerry Judy's going to blow it up, okay? And they're not even going to pass that much. They don't want to pass that much. They want to run the ball all day, especially with that defense. But Jeudy and Locke have bad chemistry. They had bad chemistry last year. I don't see that changing much this year. I can't, off the top of my head, really think of many, if any plays, where I saw Jeudy and Locke really connect. I saw multiple plays per practice. And I know AI, it's just practice. But I saw multiple plays where Teddy and Jerry were just boom, right on point, right on the money. And it's that precision, right? Cortland Sutton is Drew Lock's guy, and Sutton is coming back from the knee, so he hasn't been participating fully. So when Sutton's fully participating, that's going to bail out Drew Lock because he'll throw it up and Sutton will bail him out with the scissor hands, right?
Right.
Judy is a precision guy. Teddy is a precision guy. Teddy is just, he understands that Shermer offense. He played in the Shermer offense in Minnesota when they had the Minnesota Miracle, and he was basically like a coach for Case Keenum because his leg fell apart, basically collapsed on itself. I don't want to get too graphic, but like Teddy knows this offense. He's so precise with what he does. Again, not going to blow anybody away. I'm not sitting here saying everyone grab Teddy. Teddy's going to be the greatest ever. All I'm saying is when Teddy's in, Jerry's going to blow up. When Teddy's not in, Sutton will probably blow up. So again, a tale of two cities, Matt, but it's make or break for Drew Lock. And I'm sick of hearing about potential. And this regime has no connections to him. John Elway's going to be on Lake Tahoe. Okay. He's probably there now. Actually, I won't give too much away. I hope everyone's watching my commercials with Dalton Reisner, but I'm gonna have a chance to hang out with Peyton and John in about a week. So I'll fill in everybody then. But John Elway's going to be on a boat. Okay, he's going to be making $6 million this year. Away from the facility, right? George Payton is the guy. He has no ties to Drew Lock whatsoever, none. So. And this team with this coaching staff, who they've given one more chance to, and that has to be brought in the conversation. They said, Vic Fangio, here's everything. You need better corners. Here's better corners. Here's everything that you need. Here's a better ground game. Here's your starting running back, Javonte Williams. And I did say starter. Here's everything you need, except a quarterback. But here's everything. Now win with defense, win with the ground game, and get by with your quarterback. They're not going to sit around and wait for Drew Lock to develop and give him time. And I said this on the air. Drew Lock is dangerously close to being Blaine Gabbert, another Mizzou guy. He's dangerously close, and I wouldn't even trust him as a backup. That's the thing. Like, Drew Lock, if he develops, because there's talent, certainly, but that physical talent, Scott McLuhan told me years ago, Matt, physical stuff's easy to see. That's easy to see. Does Drew Lock have talent? Yes. Why am I hard on Drew Lock? Because he's not playing up to that talent, and this team is done waiting around for him.
He never will. And that's something that I had him, I believe, rated 6th in the RSP that year that he came out. I know I had him lower than most. And the reason isn't the arm talent. It isn't the physical talent, as he said. It's the fact that he's been enabled since high school, that he's been told that he's great. And it's not any type of, and I'm going to explain why that is, okay? Because that's not the reason why I rated him 6. It's the things that he does on the field that when you trace it back, it's very clear that this is someone that hasn't worked at their craft. This is a guy that could throw the ball a mile. He could make plays off script in high school where he didn't need the footwork. He didn't need to stay with a certain plan. He didn't have to be precise and be a rhythm passer. So as a result of that, maybe he was told by his coaches, yeah, man, you need to work on this stuff. But when you're an all-state high school player, yeah, whatever. I'm going to go on dates. I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing. I'm not going to work at my craft all that much because I can just throw the ball a country mile and I'm getting college offers. And who are these guys to tell me whatever? And he might even have parents who might have done the same thing. You're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Or they might have tried to tell him and, well, he'll figure it out in college because – he's a young kid. Let's not be too hard on him.
I know his dad, and his dad did tell him that. Like, you got to work on this, dude.
So his dad knew. And like a lot of teenagers are like, "What do you know, Dad?" Maybe not like way out there out in front like that. But usually, what happens is, just a clue to those of you who are about to have teens,
I got it, old man.
They think you're an idiot until about 25 to 28. And then they realize that, oh, maybe you weren't as big of an idiot as we thought, especially when you're not an I told you so parent, because if you're not an I told you so parent, they will come to you and then they'll actually want some assistance on what was that thing you were telling me about when I was like 15 and I thought you were a complete raving idiot. Yeah, right. That. Okay. So now he goes to college. Well, if you're still a top team or a competitive team in the SEC and going to bowl games and your school's making money, then it doesn't matter because, again, their coaches can tell you what you need to work on. But if they're not going to bench you and you continue to be the starter and they don't bench you and punish you for it, then you're not going to work on it. So when you watched him play, it was clear he was that talented guy who, when he faced the lower level teams, he'd blow up statistically. Then when he faced the Floridas or the Alabamas or the Georgias, and they actually had NFL caliber physical talents and some even like conceptual and technical talents on defense who could threaten him, then watching him try to actually play the right way and see that he couldn't do it because he hadn't practiced it, it was like the dog ate my homework kind of moment for him. And it happened over and over again in the SEC. And you see it happen in the NFL where he gets caught and because he doesn't have these skills ingrained in his game, he can't make the type of adjustments that you would like to see. He's like, there's a jazz musician by the name of Kenny Garrett who's unbelievable, play with Miles Davis, who can play funk, play straight ahead jazz. He's unbelievable. And then there's Kenny G, who plays like pop solos. Okay. Pat Mahomes, as I described in my book, was Kenny Garrett and the real Kenny G. And then the Kenny G that everyone knows that like people drink and talk over and
milk toast.
And, make babies too and things like that. That's Drew Lock. Drew Lock is the Kenny G of quarterbacks, and that's not a good thing. And when you take a look at this, of course, like you said, of course, Jerry Jeudy and Teddy Bridgewater are on lock because, no pun intended, but they're both precision guys, and they have worked so hard at their craft that their technique is just unconscious. It's just a subconscious reaction to everything that's going on. Teddy Bridgewater's unbelievable maneuver in the pocket in finding the open man in the second or third window of the same read, or finding the second or third read in that shallow and intermediate range. That's why he is still a compelling option. But then good for you. You have taste. So I'm talking to Peckish ATX over there. But when we're talking about Drew Lock doesn't have that. So that's why a guy like Jeudy gets so angry when he's running routes and he knows where he needs to be.
That's why after games, when he's not getting targets, he's tweeting out like, I just ran a bunch of wind sprints.
Yeah.
Like that frustration was real, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And Diego, the only reason Kenny G did that is because probably his agents asked him to do that, because anyone who knows circular breathing could probably do that, but they know it's just a waste of time and they're trying to make music. They're not trying to do athletic feats on a saxophone. So that's just
hot Kenny point. G and Drew Lock conversation, but it kind of goes together, right?
It does.
Because you have people that are fooled. There's people that think Kenny G's good. Right. Yeah. There's people that think Drew Lock's good, and the potential is there. It's there with a lot of people, if you want to be honest, but what's possible? Anything's possible. KG told me that. Well, he didn't tell me that, but he told everybody that anything is possible. What's likely? What's likely to happen is this team feels they're in a playoff window. And I know that there are people around the team that feel like they can go to the playoffs with Teddy Bridgewater. Done. The team feels like they can go to the playoffs with Teddy Bridgewater, whether they're true or not, whether that's realistic or Teddy sucks and whatever people want to say. Yeah. But I'm telling you what they think. They think they can go to the playoffs with Teddy Bridgewater. It's Teddy's job. Drew is just competing to see if he can beat him out. A lot of people say, and even the Broncos are promoting 50-50, right? It's a 50-50. It's Teddy's job, and then we'll see if Drew can beat him out.
No, I love it, and I think that makes total sense because, I mean, at this point, the problem is that Bronco fans probably are in a bit of denial because they invested such a high pick in Drew Lock, and you see the arm talent and the physical talent, and everyone gets really fixated on those types of things, and they don't realize that the things that he really needed, he's never worked on. And unless he worked like a maniac over the next couple of years or the past couple of years, which he hasn't worked like a maniac on, because you would have seen the difference in his game.
Yeah.
He hasn't, and he may have worked like a maniac on certain things, but not the right things.
Well, and he's meeting with Peyton Manning now. This is year 3, dude. Like it doesn't happen like that. Like
no.
As a rookie, and Peyton's been here and he's met with him twice because people made a big deal. He's meeting with Peyton Manning. Yeah, twice. And it was Peyton's idea.
See, that's
as a rookie, you should come in and be like, hey, where's Peyton live? and live on his doorstep.
Listen, Michael Vick had a similar story in Atlanta when Steve Young volunteered to come there and work with Michael Vick on the West Coast offense and footwork and all of that. And Vick met with him and then really, whatever. And then it took him being in jail, figuring out that the next chance I get, I'm doing whatever the coach says. And he actually played like a pocket quarterback a little bit in Philadelphia for that 1 year where he actually maneuvered in the pocket and looked like the type of player he could have become. Which is Lamar Jackson, essentially. But he just had a bigger arm than Lamar. He could have been a better player than Lamar Jackson is, but he didn't do it. And if Peyton, I just look at it this way. This is, again, lost on youth. He's not dumb. He's just a fool. And young people can be foolish because of lack of experience. And Drew Lock thinks he's great because he has a great arm, and everyone's told him so other than his dad, who he thinks is being too hard on him. Probably. And as a result of that, he's going to look back and go, I could have had Peyton Manning basically telling me, working with me daily or weekly. I could have become such a much better quarterback because I could have said, Peyton, listen, you need to ride by hind parts until I get better. I will show up every day. Whatever you need me to do, coach me. I will do it. You're like my private lesson tutor. I need to work on this stuff. And if he hasn't done that, that's just awesome.
Top 5 make or break quarterbacks. We'll go over a little bit today, but it's called Lanyap. I have to tell you about our Football Guys daily email. I write it every day. Joe Bryant, Sigmund Bloom also chip in, but every day, all the latest from the Football Guys Newswire, all the news and notes from around the NFL with our view on it, right hot and fresh to your inbox every morning. Listen, you have a life, we don't. Sign up for that free daily newsletter from footballguys.com. And hey, worry less, win more. Check us out, footballguys.com. Why is Jalen Hurts suggested when the Deshaun Watson thing came up? And it's make or break for Jalen Hurts. So let's talk about Jalen and this situation. But I believe it was Adam Schefter. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. I've been on vacation mode, kind of. And the word was Deshaun could still get traded, but it's not Denver. It's actually Philadelphia that's been suggested. Why?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly when you look at this, I don't think they're sold on Jalen Hurts. I think they're giving him a 1-year audition after a decent showing, versus Carson Wentz, who looked like he completely fell apart last year. So with Hurts, what you get is a guy who's got a big arm, who can move in the pocket, who can run for power, run for speed. That's great. What he hasn't proven is whether he can be an accurate drop back passer from the pocket and make plays under pressure within the pocket to win the game and be an accurate downfield guy who can command that. Certainly in Lincoln Riley's offense in Oklahoma, he had impressive numbers. Same thing with Alabama, but you have to understand too that the way that scheme is played and the types of defenses they face, he wasn't going to deal with the kind of pressure that he would face with minimal fronts that he's going to face in the NFL. So right now they want to see whether or not he can advance his game forward. Can he become a better passer, a guy that doesn't get overly invested in trying to make a play with his arm once he gets outside the pocket, and the longer he buys time, the more he tries to force the ball if he doesn't find the quick answer early. Because if he can eliminate that from his game, if he can be good in the short and really most importantly, the intermediate range of the game, maybe they'll feel like they have something in him and they won't have to draft a future starter, and they can build this with him. Now, the thing is you can tell very much that they are giving him an audition for this, but they have an idea of what they want, because when your coaching staff says, we are not molding the offense to him, they're not putting Lamar Jackson in there and saying, we're going to run the ball or we're going to do special plays that take advantage of his running ability. That says, we don't see you as the future until you show us that you're the future for what we want to do. So they don't see him as that special talent, that special enough talent to mold an offense around. So as a result of that, it's do or die for him. I do think it's going to be die ultimately for him being a starter. So either by midseason they'll trade for Watson, and that would be a great pickup for the Eagles to be able to have, or they'll be drafting a quarterback next year.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Jalen Hurts. It's the Audible Live here, and the final one it's a story that came out from Jeremy Fowler. And it's kind of goes along with what we thought, because there were the Aaron Rodgers rumbling. I'm contractually obligated every 30 minutes to bring up Aaron Rodgers. But there was the Aaron Rodgers rumbling that's, crescendoing now. Could be much ado about nothing. Could be something. We'll see. But there also was a Russell Wilson thing earlier this offseason, Matt, that you and I had talked about. Bloom had talked about it as well, where something's off with Russell and Seattle. And then everything kind of smoothed over, right? And if you just go back through the stories on our newswire, it's all on the same page, and Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, and oh man, look at these guys, and they're kumbaya and all this sort of stuff. But there was some underlying things with Russell Wilson. And in fact, there was not a trade request from Russell Wilson, even though there was talk about that. There was some interest that they had in Julio Jones, trying to make things right. He was not at some workouts that were voluntary workouts. There was the Russell Wilson is committed for 2021. Now, remember how all these things are written, who writes them, and when they come out. It's the drum beats that we're looking for, but it's not just the fluff pieces. It's why? What do you mean he's committed to 2021? You mean he wasn't? You can take any sort of headline and then reverse engineer it and be like, well, why is that the headline? Russell Wilson's committed, guys. What? Wait a second. And then for 2021. So when you read between the lines or know people behind the scenes, you were able to diagnose that there was something going on with Russell Wilson. Now, the latest from Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, it's on our newswire at footballguys.com. Seattle not sold on Russell Wilson, ? The team and Russell have a tolerable relationship for now, but there's a sense the team isn't sold on him long term, and that's in the opinion of Jeremy Fowler. Okay, so this kind of is, I guess, confirming, or maybe it's shocking to some people. We could get into the why aren't they sold on Russell Wilson long term, Matt. We could definitely do that. But let's talk about this. This is a make or break, and Russell Wilson is on this list. As incredible as that may seem to you as the viewing audience, the listening audience out there, Russell Wilson is on this list. Doesn't mean he should be, doesn't mean Seattle's got it all figured out or whatever, but we couldn't do this show, make or break quarterbacks, without putting Russell Wilson on this list.
Sure, and as an honorable mention, I'll add quickly that if he weren't on this list, we probably would put Baker Mayfield on there because his contract's coming due, and he's in an offense where he's going to have to show that he can win the big games that they need him to, and he's shown some progress, but is it going to be enough? But that's another story. Russell Wilson, the make or break, is he going to make Seattle the team that they envision themselves to be with him like they were in the past, or are they going to have a breakup? In terms of that. So I certainly see how that goes. Now, the addition of Dwayne Eskridge, I think, is going to go a long way. A lot of people may not be familiar with the Western Michigan Star, but this is a player who, former cornerback, who has great speed, who has terrific hands in terms of how he uses them at the line of scrimmage. He might be one of the most impressive receivers I've seen against press and blocking players with using his hands, because he, like a cornerback, he knows he can anticipate what defenders are going to do when they shoot their hands, and he knows how to slap them down and get his hands into the body. He's also a very physical player who plays with an edge and will basically bait and troll defensive backs to the point that they lose their temper, and then he plays it straight and then draws a ton of penalties that are in his favor. But in addition to all that, yeah, he can run after the catch. He's a speedster. He can go up and win the ball. He has some drop issues. But overall, what's going to happen here is that he's lighting up OTAs already. If he has a good enough camp, he's probably going to be the third receiver in this lineup with David Moore gone, or if Penny Hart doesn't completely overwhelm the team, who's had some good moments as well.
And Estridge's got to stay healthy. I think he had a hammy that kept him out of mandatory. So speed guys and hammies always get my radar going.
Exactly. But if he's ready for the season, then what you get is a guy who helps out Lockett way more than Metcalf did. Lockett helped Metcalf more than Metcalf helped Lockett, because Lockett had that great 2019 season, and they were so efficient together that defenses had to shade the safety over Lockett's way. That gave, Metcalf lots of one-on-ones with defensive backs who had to play way off him and give up tons of cushion on routes that he might not otherwise be able to run with a tight man on him, other than the fact that they fear that he has such strong hands. So when you take a guy like Eskridge who can play inside and outside, now you create scenarios where defensive backs have to respect Eskridge just enough that Lockett now can really shine, because the outside is they're going to be preoccupied with Metcalf on the outside, preoccupied some with Lockett on the outside with his deep speed ability, and that allows him to put Lockett in the middle of the field a lot more often. Or safeties are drawn towards Eskridge in the middle of the field, and that opens things up outside for Lockett as well a little bit more than just Metcalf alone. Russell Wilson having three weapons like that, as a player, he's fantastic. Now, why then is the team not sold on him? There's a number of possible reasons. We could go into our erstwhile, third party on this group who's on assignment talking to, who has his own hate relationship with Russell Wilson, but we'll ask Bloom on the couch about that. But I
listen and help.
Exactly. But I would say this: the probably the real reason is probably similar to what they saw with how some of the fans and media read it last year. They felt that Russell Wilson hangs onto the ball too long. They feel like that maybe he's creating some issues for himself that he needs to fix. And so teams are, and it's very possible that the team has bought into that. And I could see, especially when you see how the Eagles were, where they brought in some analytics guys who may have some points, but may not understand the whole very well. And when an ownership or a GM starts to play favorites and do dysfunctional stuff, where the guy like, Warren Sharp, who's a very knowledgeable guy in terms of the analytics of the game, and certainly writes a really great book that I think is worthwhile. But if he comes in and he doesn't get a chance to learn what the other side understands and really work together, and they create adversarial relationships with people, then that's going to tick off coaches. That's going to tick off players. Well, you could I'm just guessing, but I could see how that if the Seattle fan base is taking a look at these things and may not understand the whole, but the GM and the ownership is looking at this because they look at the media stuff and they start dropping this to Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's probably going to be like, really? You're listening to that? For all these years, and I've been hit as often as Andrew Luck and Cam Newton, if not more often.
Right.
1 year, you're going to ask me about running around a little too much and think
Mahomes stubbed his toe against the Bills, and the Chiefs fired everybody up front.
Right.
And replaced his entire offensive line. Russell Wilson's getting killed, and he's like, help, please.
Yes.
And Seattle's like, it's your fault.
Yes, exactly. So you could imagine how he probably said, forget you guys, and then they had that dust up and they decided to change that a little bit more.
It is the Audible Live. Our man Jason chiming in. What's up, pot stoner degenerate up there in Greeley? I got to get up to Greeley sometime. Broncos training camp no longer in Greeley. It's at UCL Training Center starting in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from yesterday. So we're here, Matt. We're back. Now I'll be taking some more time off. But I think Bloom will be on the show next week, Matt. I will be out maybe. I don't know. We shall see. But better
well, enjoy your assignment. Yeah.
Take a deep breath while you can, because we're about ready to go underwater for like 6 months.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty
And
much.
I didn't know this until our friend Charlie Campbell texted me. He was like, the Shrine Game's the same week as the Senior Bowl now. And I was like, well, that sucks.
Yes. I remember you mentioned that.
Sorry, Shrine
yesterday.
Game.
Yeah. Yeah. Eric, well, listen, man.
Maybe I thought about getting crazy. I thought about getting
Yeah.
crazy because the Shrine Game will start the practice on Monday. The Senior Bowl doesn't start practices till Tuesday. So I was like, maybe I could go Monday to Vegas and watch one day and then go to Mobile Tuesday.
Well, do you think that Mobile, do you think that your radio station would get you airlifted onto the field and like you could like do like a dramatic landing, or is that something that only Jay Glazier could probably do?
I think only Glazier can do that.
Okay.
So I'll check though. I will check in with that. But yeah, lots of fun, everybody. Stay safe out there in the summer vacations and have fun. And let's get back to football in a matter of moments. It'll be here before you know it. So, Matt, final thoughts tonight.
Listen, I'm just thankful that we have another good season heading down here, and that basically the pandemic that we had last year, that we're on the tail end of some of that. So that we can see things opening up and getting the chance to enjoy football in a way that maybe we didn't get to enjoy as much last year that we've done in years prior. So, I'm just thankful for good health, and I hope everybody out there is thankful for the same things and getting a chance to enjoy getting out and about and getting to looking forward to a football season a lot more like 2019 as opposed to 2020.
You'll love the show. Check out footballguys.com. Get yourself a premium subscription. Go there. You want to support the show? That's the best way to do it. We're not going to do the Patreon and God bless anyone that does that. That's fine. There are shows that are like nothing but super chats now, Matt, which is interesting to me. We'll answer your question if you super chat is $5 or something. Like, I'll just answer your question, whatever. Not on Twitter though, because I'm like, I gotta tell you, vacation. Being away from your phone, like I cannot tell you how many times I want to throw this thing. Right, there's my Shelby screensaver.
That might be the only reason why you don't throw it.
Exactly, because it's too beautiful. Plus, I can draw on it. But anyway, like just vacation mode, being like going dark from social networking and stuff. It's like, magnifique. Anyway, everyone go out there, be good to your neighbor, be a good person, and he's Matt Waldman. I'm Cecil Lammey. Follow me on Twitter.
And listen to Drew Lock's dad.
And Drew, listen to your dad. Andy's a good guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's Matt. I'm Cecil. We're the Audible. Everyone, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned. And as always, stay frosty.